Today's decision has started a new chapter in the saga of the history of Asian Americans in this country. It marks the promise of a new beginning, a resurgence of the principles of the American dream, and a return to the egalitarian principles for all.
And that, my friends, is why they are big mad. As always, I'm Andrew Esquire, and this is the Legal Mindset. We teach you to be your own judge. Today, we're going to be talking about the absolute meltdown that is coming from affirmative action in universities being smacked down by based Justice Thomas and the rest of the Supreme Court in the 6-3 decision, and what this really means, what the practical outcome is from this case, which is going to be a giant W for Asian Americans and an L for those that are actually truly unqualified and would not be able to meet the standards of those schools under an objective, merit-based analysis. As always, this channel, we're here to help you be your own judge, make your own decisions, and come up with a better type of analysis. And oh boy, I am absolutely loving the meltdown, the reactions that we are getting today from the people on the woke left that are absolutely salty about this, that absolutely are not happy about this, and who frankly misunderstand what affirmative action is, particularly in the legal context and in the context of university admissions. See, the people out there on the left want to give you this spin that affirmative action is any sort of effort at all whatsoever that could be extended to helping out anybody in need or reaching out into communities where you wouldn't normally go. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is looking at admissions, looking at college admissions and saying, hey, okay, we're going to look at their qualifications, we're going to look at their SAT score, their grades or GPA, and we're also going to use race as a factor. And we're going to look at that as a way to determine whether they can be let into school or not. In fact, for a long time, for law school, there was actually a law school admissions calculator. And you could put in whether or not you were an underrepresented minority, right? If you're LGBTQ++, black, Native American, whatever else, you put that in, and when you click that button, you see how the scores and the grades dropped, how the requirements dropped for law schools. Well, similar was the case in undergraduate master's programs in general higher education, which, by the way, has been completely captured by the left, by the leftist establishment, pretty much across the board. So they were down with this, and this is something that for a long time I've been calling out, people have called out, that the true people who are down with discrimination, who are down with looking against merit and actually looking at your race, the color of your skin as determinant of whether or not you are let in or out of the establishment, of the, whether the gate is lifted for you. That's no longer okay. It is no longer all right to use race as a factor in admissions for whether a student is admitted or not. And particularly when you looked at how this came out, the de facto, right, the way in which this thing was implemented by universities, what happened was they would look at the exam, they would look at, the applicant, they would look at their exams, they would look at their grades, sure, they would do that, right, but they would look at their race. And first and foremost, they would say, have we hit our quota? Do we have too many Asians? And if there are too many Asians, we can no longer let any more Asians in. We now have to let other people in. We don't have enough black people, so now we have to let more in. Hispanics, we don't have enough of them. We got to let them in, right? We've got to go check, our Native American, okay, we got to let them in as well because we got a quota here, right? Doesn't matter that they wouldn't have met the requirements. It doesn't matter that they wouldn't stack up. We've got to let them in order to fulfill the agenda of our corporate overlords, of our political overlords. And that's the way it was. And that's how it was at many institutions across the United States. And folks that were denied from this were, not really happy about that. So, of course, they brought suit against that. And primarily the group that has been facing this the most has been Asian Americans. Of course, the groups that have been benefited the most, in this case particularly African Americans, not too happy about that. but they seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding, and this is perhaps very, very characteristic by the folks over here on MSNBC, who I love this bad take on what affirmative action is and isn't. This is one here that I'm going to play for you guys, and this is a clear example of what affirmative action isn't. So let's listen to Joy here, to Joy Reid here, explain what she thinks affirmative action is and what she thinks is prohibited by this decision. Let's just play this out.
Let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action. I went.
Okay, so right off the rip, she's making the claim that legal affirmative action, so affirmative action as part of the admissions process, as a criteria of admission, is the only reason she got in. So in order to make that statement, let's just be very clear. You would need to have actually spoken to the admissions officer and actually been told, yeah, we only let you in because you're black. That was the only reason you let in. Your grades were crappy, your tests were crappy, we only let you in. That's what you'd have to do to be able to make that statement of only. But of course, they're never genuine. Let's see what she thinks affirmative action is.
To a school no one had ever heard of in Denver, Colorado, in a small suburb. I didn't go to Exeter or Andover.
Yeah,
I didn't have college test prep. I just happened to be really nerdy and smart and have really good grades and good SAT scores.
Right.
But someone came to Denver, Colorado to look for me. A Harvard recruiter flew to Denver, and I met up with her at the Village Inn restaurant and did a pre-interview to get to pull me into Harvard. I was pulled in, and the schools like Harvard and Yale that I got into.
Yeah, okay, so this is what she thinks is affirmative action. And to be very clear, there's nothing about that, about somebody going out, for example, and doing recruiting, college recruiting, that is prohibited under this decision. And this is where the leftists kind of fall off the wagon. They have this demented view of what is affirmative action and what is not. Going out there and recruiting, sending a recruiter to all sorts of different schools is perfectly permissible. This decision will not disallow people from going to small schools and looking for candidates, for going out there and canvassing, even going to HBCUs, for example, and saying, hey, we're gonna go to HBCUs, we're gonna look at people for law school master's degrees. They can do that, just like they do with on-campus interviews. When I was in law school, law firms would come and they would interview at the best schools in the state, and they would kind of do it across the board in kind of a uniform way. As long as you're out there, going through a process, right? And you can go out there and put the recruiters out there, but the process to actually bring them in, to select that individual student, can no longer use race. So let me be clear. So Joy was saying, hey, I had good grades and I was smart. Well, then you probably would have gotten in without affirmative action. If you applied to the school, you would have gotten in. It seems like you had the grades. You were probably doing better than a lot of people that otherwise would have applied there. So just sending in the application would have been enough for you. So nothing about that would be contained. But in fact, it's going to have a much bigger impact, and particularly on Asian American students. And this is something that a very, very based Asian brought up here on ABC. And I just want to play this very quickly for you guys so you hear this.
University student. I know, Alex, you're on the other side of this. You were hoping that the Supreme Court would move in the direction that it did today. Why do you think that this is the right way to move forward on this?
Right. Well, I think this is a win for students all across America, because we shouldn't be judging students based on their race when we're deciding who gets into what schools. I think that I believe that your previous guest is mistaken in this regard, because I think that by getting rid of affirmative action, now we look at the individual student and what they've accomplished, and we can look at what barriers they've overcome. But we view them as an individual first and foremost, as opposed to just viewing them as a blob in an amorphous, larger racial group, as opposed to just under this new system, we get to view students for who they are as individuals. And I think that's a much better way to go forward on this topic.
And this is really what I want to get to at the core of this, which is merit should look at the individual and should stop looking at monoliths. And I think this is one of the problems in modern America that we've gotten into, is casting entire racial groups as a monolith. And to be clear, we can all accidentally do this at times, saying, hey, all Democrats this way, all Republicans are this way. We can cast entire groups of people, right, as a monolith, but we all know that's not true. We all know there's nuance there. And the real truth behind admissions, whether it's to a job or to university, should be looking at that individual, not the fact that they have this skin color or they're part of this ethnic group or they have even further, or they have a specific sexuality, which has nothing to do with intelligence or job performance. To look at that as a criteria to remove them or include them, yeah, that's a problem. Just let's look at the individual and are they actually capable of coming in and doing what they want to do under this program? Are they capable of going through? Are they capable of excelling? Are they capable of succeeding? A lot of times these folks that were brought in there, right, they're brought in there because, hey, we want to bring you in despite the fact your grades don't cut it, right? Despite the fact that you're not smart enough objectively, right? The fact you don't have the test scores, right? You don't have any of the background for this. They bring these people in, and actually looking back at it, a lot of these people end up dropping out. They say, look, I can't cut it. I'm not made out for this. I can't keep pace. This is just something that is not for me. We're setting them up for failure. You're also setting them up to say, hey, you're not good enough for this based on your race, based on your you're not good enough based on your grades and your intelligence. We're only picking you because of this race. That is much more demeaning to the individual, right? And saying your accomplishments do not matter. We are only letting you in here because of your race. Affirmative action is something that has always been looked down upon, and I'm glad it took justices like Justice Thomas, who folks love to give the attention to Ketanji, be like as if Ketanji is the first person on the Supreme Court who's black. Yeah, you're kind of forgetting a couple, like Thurgood Marshall's kind of rolling around in his grave. But Justice Thomas, absolutely in the majority here, blowing this out of the water, 6-3 decision. This one's going to stick around for a while and be very, very difficult for the university to squirrel around. And the Supreme Court put a warning in there. Hey, guys, we know you're going to try to go around this. Don't play, because we're going to take this up and we will shoot this down once again. I think this is one of the things that will stick for a while. It's good news, and I hope to see more good decisions out of the Supreme Court just like this. Guys, if you like this comment, if this is something you enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for getting me to 100,000 subscribers. Appreciate all of you, and I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.